All right, folks, welcome to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by Superbook Sports. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I'm not excited to discuss what was a Denver Nuggets loss on Saturday afternoon. I'm recording this on Sunday evening. You'll probably see this on Monday afternoon or Monday morning, Monday afternoon, so apologies for the delay. If you are hoping to watch this on YouTube, I'll try to go through the game in as efficient of a way as possible, make sure that I don't leave anything out. And also, last segment, I'm going to be doing some reaction to the overreaction, the tweets that I had put forth on Saturday, especially the one about Jokić for the MVP. I want to play factor crap with those tweets because I understand that a lot of people got very upset, and I want to, I guess, hold myself accountable, hold the takes accountable at this stage. I want to try to do that consistently and admit when I'm wrong or admit when I'm right. But for this one, at least in the first two segments, we are going to go over Denver's loss to the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday, Nikola Jokić versus Joel Embiid, a big game during rivalry week. And this one did not end the way that Nuggets fans hoped. It began the way Nuggets fans hoped. I thought that this was a prototypical first half that the Nuggets were hoping for. You go up 73-58, don't do anything too crazy, let Embiid score one-on-one, but try to get some stops every now and then, and I thought Denver played it pretty well. I thought that they went up 73-58, winning by 15 points in that first half, but they ultimately lost the game 126-119 in a game where, yes, Joel Embiid did dominate Nikola Jokić. And I don't want to sugarcoat that. And I didn't sugarcoat it on Saturday, which I think some people were pretty upset about. But I think that Nikola Jokić got flambéed in this game. I think that the first half was pretty even. I thought Jokić got the upper hand because the rest of his teammates really helped show up and hit the shots that he needed to hit. And Denver played the game extremely well as a team. And I thought that was great. That was a great sign for where the Nuggets are at. They approached this game as a team really well. But then Embiid came back in the second half and I think scored about 28 points in that second half in 20 minutes or so. And all of those, pretty much all of them, were against Jokić, where it wasn't even really switches. It wasn't anything crazy. This was Embiid going directly at Jokić and trying to make up for all of the MVP stuff, trying to make up for all of that jazz. And I firmly believe that Jokic's 2 MVPs were deserved. Jokić deserved both of those. And it sucks that Embiid was playing as well as he was those seasons, while Jokić was playing as well as he was during those last 2 seasons, and that Jokić deserved the MVP both times. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say the other way right now that, look, I think that Jokić has had a better season so far than Joel Embiid overall, but this game in particular makes it so. Jokić got thoroughly clocked in this one, and there were a lot of plays where Embiid just hit the step-back jumper, drove right around him, got to his spots, got up his shots, made the team better. But there was a key moment at the beginning of the third quarter. A change that Doc Rivers made where he took Embiid off of Jokić and had PJ Tucker guard Jokić instead. And that was a big deal because I think it brought back memories of Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert. It brought back Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis, Al Horford, Grant Williams, and Robert Williams. Those guys where you have a thick, physical defender bashing Jokić, doing everything that he can to get him frazzled, try to take Denver out of their motion offense, and Denver got disrupted, specifically Jokić. I don't think that Jokić handled this very well. And he had 6 turnovers in the second half, mostly because he was indecisive, not passing the ball to the right spots, and not making the right decisions at the right time. And that's tough. That's a tough thing for Nuggets fans to hear, especially because Jokić makes the correct decision, so often. It's abnormal for Jokić to play the way that he played, and I do think that it frazzled him. Do I think it'll frazzle him when it comes back around again? No. And do I think that it really mattered in the grand scheme of Jokic's ultimate stat line of like 24 points on 12 shots, 9 assists, 8 rebounds? No. Denver played, and Jokić played well enough in this game for the Nuggets to win. He was a -1 in this game, and the big issue was that in the non-Jokić minutes, Denver couldn't really get it done, and we'll get to that in the second segment. But I think, in my mind, that Jokić and the Nuggets in general are so used to him dominating those minutes that the Nuggets are at a point of extreme reliability with that when it doesn't happen, and it did not happen in the second half, the Nuggets had zero answers. That's a problem. All the momentum was with Philly, where PJ Tucker's making hustle plays, Embiid's shooting over and dunking around Jokić on the other end, and then you didn't get enough help for Jokić in the second half. So let's talk about the other guys now, because we're kind of belaboring the point. Jokić had a bad overall game by his standards. If you look at it from the perspective of any other center in the NBA outside of Jokić or Embiid, he had a pretty good game. But that was not what the standard was for this game on Saturday. And I think you're going to see a lot of that reflected in some of the MVP conversation over the course of these next few months. Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray in this game barely sat in the second half. He looked very banged up at various points, but he did not play well when he was out there overall. First half, I thought he was fine. I thought he was pretty good, actually. 5 of 9 from the field. I think he had 3 assists. In the second half, it says that he was 2 of 7 on the actual chart. I don't remember that. I thought he just made, or I guess, okay, 5 of 9. Okay, so he was 2 of 7 from the field in the second half. Did not make his teammates better in the second half. And I thought that the stint that really killed Denver was when Murray came back in at the end of the third and then start of the fourth. And Denver didn't play basketball the way that they needed to play. Part of that is on Murray. He's the guy who's dribbling a lot in that situation. He is the guy who needs to take control and put himself into a good position to take efficient shots and then make those efficient shots. Part of it is on Jokić, and we've gone over that for sure. I think that the PJ Tucker part of this really flustered Jokić, and I think that the Matisse Thybulle part of this really frustrated Murray. Matisse Thybulle is a great defender. He was considered overrated heading into last year's playoffs, and he didn't have a good playoff run. But in general, I think that Matisse Thybulle is a great defender, and his ability to athletically stick with Murray, get into passing lanes, disrupt him, get through screens, not necessarily in a physical way, but just like an athletic, dynamic way. I think that disrupted Murray's timing and his overall balance and ability to get to the bucket. I think that we'll talk about this more in the second segment with the bench situation, but I do think that Murray has to start, he's got to really start taking over and be that second star. There are definitely moments where he does it, and perhaps he was a little bit rusty, having not played since Tuesday. But he looks tired. He just looks physically drained. And him playing 21 and a half minutes in the second half of the game probably didn't really help matters. He has to be able to find time to rest. The Nuggets have to find time to rest him with the way that they're playing him. If Malone is going to play Murray 21 minutes, then he can't play him the last 15 minutes of the game. If you're going to do it, you got to split up that rest a little bit more evenly. And I think that Murray got tired out towards the end of this one and didn't play very well. There were some fine moments on defense. There were some okay moments on the offensive end. And in the first half, I thought he looked much better, looked much more dynamic and confident in himself and confident in his ability to get to his spots. I do think that he'll recover. He'll be better. But down the stretch of that game, with Jokić only getting up 12 shots and having 7 turnovers, part of that is on Murray to take more shots, take more ownership of that situation, and take the playmaking aspect of it out of Jokic's hands at times. Where if Jokić isn't doing that well, if he isn't playing that well, just run some traditional stuff, and then Murray's got to get to his spots and be successful. Didn't happen, and that's fine. They'll be okay. Aaron Gordon, this was the key, I think, for the starters, and we'll go through this relatively quickly here. When they switched that matchup, it was only after Aaron Gordon had been playing really, really well. Jokić had been playing well. Gordon had been playing well. The Nuggets had been playing well as a team. They scored 73 points in the first half, scored 46 points in the second half. And the big reason for that was because Embiid was on Gordon. And Gordon was hanging out in the dunker spot for much of the time. Wasn't spacing out to the three-point line. So Joel Embiid, a massive, massive player, is right under the rim, doing everything that he can to be as disruptive as possible in his role as a roamer. And when you're in that situation as Joel Embiid, he has the ability to recover for the most part. And Aaron Gordon had some moments where he got up some shots, but he only attempted 4 shots, made 3 of them. That's great. But Gordon has to be, I think, a little bit more involved as a spacer when they're going to switch that matchup. Got to get out to the three-point line. Got to get out to the wing. Make it so that Embiid has to be as far away from Jokić and in help distance as possible. Because if that's the case, you're putting Embiid into situations where he's not that comfortable guarding on the perimeter. Because he's not. Like, face it, if he gets switched on to Murray, Porter, or KCP, he's probably not going to get all the way out there to contest those guys. If he's on Gordon, it's fine because Gordon isn't going to be just immediately catching and firing and in that situation where you feel super comfortable with it. But then you got to run some actions. You can't just stick Gordon in the short corner for that entire time. And I really do think it disrupted Denver. They did not know how to deal with it, and it's because the space was so congested. The offense slowed down. It was disrupted. That's too bad. Michael Porter, really good recovery. Let's be honest. First things first with him. It was really good to see Michael Porter on the court. He's been dealing with tragedy, dealing with a horrible situation where his brother, obviously, I know everybody's heard this story now, but his brother was in a crash at 2:00 in the morning around the DU area, and the crash killed the other driver. Details still coming out about it, all of the situation, but Porter was away from the team for a week and recovered and was at practice on Friday and then played on Saturday. It's really good to see him out there, and I thought he played pretty well, for being honest. 20 points for Michael Porter, 5 of 9 from 3, 7 of 11 from the field in general. Hit a nice floater, I want to point out, but the most important thing is that he just spaced the floor so well. And it was so important for that spacing to be out there. Michael Porter was a +8 in this game. He led the team in plus-minus in his 29 minutes. It wasn't perfect because James Harden was hunting him in pick and roll. He was trying to get Michael Porter switched onto him in every single possession. And there were a lot of times where Porter was just behind the play and James Harden couldn't really, he had a pretty easy opportunity getting the ball to Joel Embiid for much of that game. Harden had 13 assists to 0 turnovers. It wasn't a hard game for him, but that's fine because if you're Denver, I think you've got to live with it, with Porter being +8, with him being very successful. And in the second half, because the first half, I think he had 12 points on 4 of 5 from 3 pretty much. That was what he did. Second half, didn't stay as involved. Got out in transition a little bit, had a nice floater off of some action, hit another 3. But for the most part, that was it. And Denver, they don't go to him enough in situations where he's got it going, where the opposing team is going to sell out to try to stop him. I think they bailed the defense out with the way that they played. I think that trying to force feed Jokić, trying to dribbling around with Murray a little bit, trying to create some area, trying to create some space. I do not think it led to good process for Denver. And good process often means Michael Porter's getting shots or a floor spacer in general is getting shots. And it didn't happen. And that's fine. Denver's going to learn from it. But more than anything, it was just good to see Porter back. Like, you know, the weaknesses with the defense, you know, you got to understand that when teams involve Michael Porter and Nikola Jokić in the pick and roll, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. But they can be better, and they will be better. That's a good thing because they were pretty bad. And finally, in the starting lineup, KCP, really quickly, 8 points, 3 of 8 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. One of those threes came with about a minute 40 or so left in the game. It was just a very cold-blooded 3. Murray passed the ball cross-court, waited for some action and some guys to kind of go by him, then found KCP on the opposite side of the floor with a really nice cross-court pass. And then KCP hit it. He just is very clutch in that situation. And Denver needed him to hit it. They needed that opportunity, and they got it. KCP, you have no issues with. 3 steals, played well, a good plus-minus, at +5. I don't think it was him. I think that he was a spacer in this situation. 4 assists, 3 steals is really good, and he hit the shots that he got. 8 points on 8 shots isn't the best efficiency, but not worried because he went 2 of 4 from 3. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to discuss the bench lineup and something that continues to plague Denver at this stage. But first, everybody, this is brought to you by Superbook Sports. The final drive for championship is here, and there's no better place to wager on the football title tilt than Superbook Sports. Superbook features the best menu of prop bets in the business. Plus, check out their special odds boost at Superbook and special odds boost and promotions at superbook.com. With over 3 decades of odds-making experience in Las Vegas, there's no place better to wager than Superbook Sports. Win some money as one lucky team wins the championship. Download the Superbook Sports app today. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. We'll be right back at Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Let's now go to the bench lineup as Denver was pretty healthy for this game. I was pretty surprised to see that everybody played. There was a lot of questionable designations for the team, but it did seem like everybody got up for this game, that everybody wanted to play, wanted to keep themselves ready for it. And it was good that Denver sat everybody on Wednesday, even though they might have been able to win on Wednesday. But neither here nor there. Denver's bench lineup in this game kind of went back to an old favorite. Bones Highland, Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Zeke Naji. Not surprised that this is the direction that they went. And it's kind of too bad. Like, I think that Vlatko has earned his time. I think that Vlatko has been better than Jeff Green. I think that Denver needs something in that second unit. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit here, but it does sort of feel like the pecking order has been established, right? Bruce Brown's your 6th man. He's going to be that guy. Bones Highland is your 7th man. Jeff Green is your 8th man. And Zeke Naji is your 9th man. In terms of minutes, that's the most likely allocation that is going to happen. Maybe you could even go Jeff Green as your 7th man, because that first forward off the bench is often somebody that's going to play about 20 minutes a game. And Jeff Green played 19. He was bad, and he probably would have played more had he been better. But unfortunately, he was really bad. We'll get to that in just a bit, but my thinking with this bench unit at this stage, and we can go through the individual names, but the stat that I'm running across the screen right now for everybody watching on YouTube, I want everybody to pay attention to this. This is via cleaning the glass and their ability to factor out non-garbage time minutes. The Bones Highland, Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown trio in the minutes without Nikola Jokić, so your bench minutes, minus 20.6 net rating in 252 possessions. You have a 108.7 offensive rating and a 129.3 defensive rating. First of all, both of those numbers are horrible. Let's be clear. You want to be, the offensive rating isn't horrible. I don't want to overstate that and be super dramatic. You want to be at about 112 to 115 if you can get there. That means that Denver can be passable, even if their defense isn't great. It won't kill them. But the problem that Denver has run into with this Jamal Murray stagger is that they are small and they do not have the front court players to completely minimize those mistakes of being small, especially when Zeke Naji is a guy who's going to switch onto a lot of people. If you had a drop coverage center, if you had somebody that really protected the rim, it might be a little bit different, where you could get away with guys who are a little bit smaller as long as they fought, as long as they made sure to get over screens and contest from behind and get their hands in passing lanes and things like that. The problem with switching is that you're always putting yourself into a situation where those guys get put onto bigs and then they're offensive rebounding or they're getting dump offs down into the lane. And it's just very hard for small players to guard big. Jamal Murray does his best. Bruce Brown occasionally does some stuff. Bones is pretty much dead on arrival when you're talking about guarding bigger guys. But in order to make it work, you have to have two players that are going to be elite switch defenders and can cover a lot of ground. I think that Zeke actually represents one of those guys. Jeff Green, though, not going to happen. It's just not going to be a thing. And so you go through it, and there are other configurations with this group that are a little bit better. But going back to that game specifically, we'll start with Bones Highland here. 21 minutes, 11 points, 4 of 10 from the field. He was a minus 11 in this game. But I thought his process was pretty good, at least in the first half. I really did appreciate the way that he approached the game. He wasn't forcing anything, but he was being decisive and attacking in the minutes and in the opportunities where he got it. He didn't settle for threes. He got to the rim. He put pressure on the opposing team, and he got his hands into passing lanes and really was disruptive defensively. That's what you want to see. You want to see him going all out, putting himself into a position where people are being like, they're having to respect him and they're taking pressure off of Jamal Murray as a result. That's what you're hoping for in that situation. Second half, didn't go as well. Missed some shots, missed the threes that he was hoping to hit, went 1 of 6 from 3 overall. That's too bad. Denver could have really used some of those other threes. But it's not something that I'm going to berate him over because, look, he's been shooting really well for the entire season. Hasn't shot well from the perimeter lately, but that is what it is. It's the other stuff that you're worried about with him. And he did it this time. Like, he did pretty well. I thought his defense was fine. Thought it was pretty reasonable, if we're being honest. And I don't think that he was the guy that you can really look at tonight and say, okay, this was on Saturday night, excuse me. He wasn't the guy that you can really blame in this one. Could you have asked for more? Yes. Is it really reasonable? No. So I'm not gonna berate this point. I thought that Murray, we'll go back to Murray here real quick. I thought that he was a guy who could have taken over and played that role a little bit better with the bench. There were some moments in the first half that he did it fine. And then there were some moments in the second half where he did not. And the bench had their opportunities. First 4 minutes of the fourth quarter, without either Jokić or Embiid on the floor. Both of those guys, I think they went the distance in that third quarter. So in the fourth quarter, you're facing off against James Harden. Harden's doing his thing. I think that Tobias Harris got to his spots. Georges Niang hit shots. Tyrese Maxey, he was a plus 14 in this game. Tyrese Maxey was. And that's where you're looking for in this case, where somebody like him to really put pressure on the rim, to put yourself into situations where those shots are killer. And Denver just didn't have enough of that in the second half between Bones, between Murray. That's fine. Like, they will be better, like, offensively going forward. Offense also wasn't really the thing that lost Denver this game. They gave up 126. So actually, that's not true. Offense with Joker going up against PJ Tucker was probably the biggest thing. But next biggest thing, I don't think that Murray approached it that great with either the starters or the bench in the second half. Some of it, my brother let me know about this. He got bumped several times. When he went down, I saw him, the elbow that he was holding and rubbing at various points. He was holding his hip. He got bumped in his knee. Like, I'm not going to be like the ultimate Jamal Murray defend his honor kind of thing. He was hurt. He was injured. Everybody gets hurt. Everybody gets injured. It's not an excuse. It did happen, but like, everybody's got to fight through it. It's just too bad that it happened to Jamal. Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown wasn't good. He had some really bad moments where he's been really bad contesting threes this year, I think. Had a blocked shot on the perimeter, which was nice, but he contested a Tyrese Maxey three that dropped and then committed a flagrant foul by getting under him. And then right at the end of the third quarter, he fouls Joel Embiid, like 3/4 court away from the basket, and gives him 3 free throws as a result that he makes. Denver loses this game by 7. That's a big difference. It really is. Like, you can't have plays like that. It can't just be like, it's one of those things where if you do that in a 2-point game and then lose, that's the only thing people are going to talk about, because it was such a visceral fourth quarter bash from Joel Embiid. It wasn't as big of a deal, but like, if this game did come down to it, that would have been horrible. And I honestly just think that Bruce has not been as good of a defender this year as the Nuggets were hoping for. I don't know what they were expecting. I don't know whether they were hoping he could be their stopper. He could be somebody that contests everything. He has good moments at times. He did block the 3 on the perimeter, but I don't think he really disrupted Harden or Maxey the way that the Nuggets were hoping that he would. And when he gets switched on to somebody bigger, he is also toast, whether it's Tobias Harris or Georges Niang or somebody akin to that. If he gets switched onto those guys, it's an issue. So it is what it is. Like, Bruce Brown is somebody that the Nuggets trust, and they need him to be good. But I also don't know how better he's been than Christian Brown. And that's a problem. Like, you want that to be pretty definitive here. I think that both of those guys should play. And Bruce Brown is the vet. He's the guy that you brought in. He's a very valuable, versatile piece. I'm not denying that. There are things that he does that kind of bother me. The floater has not worked, and it's still something that Denver's got to figure out. Jeff Green, not putting up a lot of stats for Jeff Green in this one. 19 minutes, 1 rebound, -12. Look, Jeff Green doesn't do a lot of guarding on the perimeter. Like, he's a floater, a roamer for the most part. He's covering up for a lot of other people's mistakes. He had a couple of good closeouts on Niang. Niang did make his threes for the most part when he wasn't closed out, and there were some closeouts that Jeff Green had that were slow, where Niang then gets the 3 that he wants, and it's curtains at that point. So Jeff's got to be better defensively. Like, there's no other way around this. He is the mark in a lot of these cases. It is Bones and it is Jeff. Some will criticize Murray. I don't think of it that way. Some will criticize Bruce Brown. I don't think of it that way. And I think Zeke Naji is also very good himself. Jeff Green is the guy that's got to step up defensively. Like it just has to happen if he's going to be in the rotation and the Nuggets are going to win a title. He can't be too slow on this draw. He plays at one speed. It's a very consistent speed. He's not going to get sped up. He's also not going to speed up if you need him to. And I keep thinking about trades for Denver because of things like this, because I don't know what they're going to get from Jeff Green on a nightly basis. They're going to get a couple screens here. They're going to get a couple of rolls to the basket, and he had a nice finish in the lane on a switch over somebody smaller. But it isn't like, that's not enough. They have to have better defense on 100% of the possessions. And Jeff is a good communicator. He's somebody who helps people get to the right spots. But if he's not getting to the right spots himself, committing fouls, not necessarily playing the good switchable defense that you need him to, then that is a weakness. And Denver can't have any weaknesses heading into this playoff run that they're going to have. With the trade deadline coming right around the corner, it would not surprise me if the rotation looks different. And Denver's probably got to figure that out because I don't feel confident in the bench. I don't. And finally, Zeke Naji. 10 minutes. Jokić played 38 in this one, so Zeke played the other 10 minutes. In the first grouping of minutes, I think his first 6 minutes or so, Naji played all of those against Joel Embiid. They flipped Embiid's rotation in the first half, put it back to normal in the second. His rotation in the first half, Naji was only a -3. -6 overall in the game, but -3 in those 6 minutes going up against Joel Embiid. And it's not like Embiid didn't cook in that situation. Like he had some really good moments, and Naji didn't really have any answers. Like when you get that close to the basket, it's really hard for Naji to guard. He also struggled to box him out. I think Embiid had a whole bunch of rebounds, not just with Jokić on the court, but with Naji on the court. He had 6 offensive rebounds in total, Embiid did. And I just think that's going to be a weakness when you play a switching center like Zeke Naji. The problem is you can't play DeAndre Jordan against Joel Embiid, or else he's going to cook him both in space and on the move. Like that's just not going to happen. So I thought that Naji played him reasonably well. And in the minutes where he played Montrezl Harrell wasn't great either. So Zeke was a -6. He hit a 3. He had a steal and a block. He had 2 rebounds. I'm not pointing this at Zeke. I think that he was fine. I think that this is the tough matchup for him. But he's not the guy that I'm looking at in this situation thinking he has to be better. I think Jeff's got to be better. I think Bones has to be better. I think Bruce Brown has to be better. Those guys did not have as difficult of matchups. Murray was being hounded by Matisse Thybulle the entire time, or DeAnthony Melton the entire time. And Bones has to find his own opportunities in that case. Bruce Brown, same thing. Jeff Green, same thing. Those guys just got to be better and bolster, do something. And it wasn't enough in this last matchup. And maybe in the next matchup it'll be better. But I know that that's what they're talking about. There's got to be some conversation about improving the bench and what that looks like going forward. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to play Fact or Crap with Ryan's reactionary tweets. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Let's wrap up this pod by talking about Fact or Crap tweets. Obviously, in the game, in the moment, I feel like I'm a pretty reactionary person. I also feel like I'm a pretty self-effacing person and am willing to make fun of myself in situations where you get a little bit caught up in the moment, you get a little bit emotional, and I would like to revisit some of those moments where you just take, I'm just going to look at 3 separate tweets, and we are going to play Fact or Crap, and you guys can play along at home or in the comments section on YouTube. I'll be taking a look. But let's go with now tweet number 1. Embiid was a million times better than Joker today when it mattered, and that matters. It's a January game, but that's going to demolish the three-peat chances. A lot of people did not like this tweet. I'm going to be honest. This was pretty funny. Also pretty frustrating. I should have muted this tweet when I saw the initial brushback. But look, this was crap. This is crap. And I will defend myself here right now, but I think that there are these visceral moments that MVP voters are going to remember when you think about the season, when you think about the seasons of these individual players. And one of the things that really stands out is the matchups between the players, where you see on a very even stage in general what happened, who performed better than who, how did the game go, what did you feel during that situation. And I think a lot of people in the first half of that game felt that Jokić had outplayed Embiid, and that was good. In the second half, Embiid scored 28 points and Jokić scored, 6? 8? Yeah, 8. He had 8 points and 6 turnovers in the second half, and he played 38 minutes. It's not like he didn't play a lot. He played 20 of the 24 minutes in the second half, Jokić did. So I think it's a visceral moment that people are going to remember in all of this. However, it is crap because, as many people tried to remind me over Twitter, it is one game. It's one game out of 82. It is a January 28th game that people are going to remember, but they're also going to remember that it was just one game. And Jokić does have an opportunity in March to really pay back this matchup where Embiid comes to Denver late March, right when people are starting to remember MVP voting. And if he dominates in that matchup, outplays Embiid, and Denver outplays Philly, I will quote tweet this and say the same exact thing, but just reverse it. It's going to be hilarious. I will do that. And everybody should hold me to that. That's definitely something that should happen if that happens. But you are right. It is crap in general. And Nuggets fans, I understand, and I apologize. It wasn't my brightest moment, which is why I'm being self-effacing here. I do think that a lot of people are going to try to remember that game, but Jokić does have an opportunity for the rest of the season to kind of put that in the rear view, continue dominating, and then the next time these two come up against each other, it can't be the same outcome, because if it's the same outcome, then that is really bad. If it's not the same outcome and it's flipped, then maybe that's a little bit different, and maybe this particular game doesn't matter as much. So let's go now to tweet number 2. Quote, "Since returning, Jeff Green is playing himself out of the rotation." Let's look up, before I do this, I want to look up Jeff Green's numbers since returning from the hand injury. Hasn't played a ton of games, so I don't want to belabor this point, I think. He's only played 5 games since returning. In those 5 games, the Nuggets are minus 17 in 5 games. Jeff Green himself is 46.7% from the field, 30.8 from 3, hasn't recorded a block yet, has recorded 2 rebounds per game, despite the fact that he's averaging 20.5 minutes per game. In general, it's fine as like a ninth man. It's not the worst thing in the world. So I may have to call crap on this too, because you just look at the numbers and you look at the outcomes and you think, okay, it's not really the worst. Like, did Denver play the strongest competition during those first three games? No. And that's a big point in this. Did they play stronger competition in those next 2, and then Denver lost those games with Jeff Green playing a major role? Yeah, that's true. That happened. I think he's got to be better. I think he's got to be more productive. He can't just be putting up 0s, 1s, and 2s in many of these categories. He's got to be putting up more. And it's not points. Like, I really I want to see him grabbing more steals and blocks. I want to see him get a block. I think it's not a crazy thing. I think his foul trouble in general, only had 1 in this last game, 2 the game before, but First game back, he had 5 fouls. Second game back, he had 4 fouls. He probably just needs to be better in general. And on top of that, Denver can't have two bigs where they're both kind of complementary bigs and just trying to do the dirty work. They need to have somebody who's involved. And so that's where the scoring does come in. It's where the playmaking does come in. He's got to be able to make decisions, or somebody does, where when Joker goes out of the game, you need somebody who can be a fulcrum. You need somebody who can do some of those things. Maybe not all of them, but just like make a pass out of the pick and roll, or I don't know, post up. Like that would be good. So there's a lot of opportunities there for Jeff to be better, and Jeff does need to be better for sure. Tweet number 3, quote, probably the most important thing for the Nuggets that came from this game is not the Joker versus Embiid matchup. It's the bench. It's always the bench. It is always the bench. I went back and looked at this number. In the Nuggets' 24 road games that they've played so far this season, they've won the minutes with the bench 6 total times. 6 times is not good enough. It's not a great sign that it's only been 6 times. They've lost those minutes 16 times, and they've tied twice. So they've only lost those minutes 2/3 of the time. And that's probably a better way to frame it in general. When you keep it even or you win, that's good enough most of the time. When you are in a situation where, I don't know, it just always feels like the starters have to be great. That's at the stage where I'm at, and they do. Like that's a thing. But Denver, with the stagger that they have, they're always playing one of their best players in Jamal Murray with the bench. There is never, ever a moment where they are not with Jokić or Murray. And to me, I think that eliminates the plus-minus argument. You should be better in that situation. Denver should be better. Bruce Brown was signed on to be one of the strongest six-man candidates, and I cape for him as a better six-man option than somebody like Russell Westbrook. And I think that that's true. But in order to be like that, you got to be more potent, got to be more consistent, got to be better defensively. And Denver as a bench in general, they just don't have a lot of potency right now. There's not enough point production. There's not enough defensive production. The highlight plays have kind of gone out the window. And I think if you're Denver, you've got to get some oomph, some juice, whatever it is, back into the bench lineup, because it's not there. It's just not. And a lot of that was Bones Highland playing the way the Bones plays, and then setting up other guys to be successful too. That happened a lot during his rookie year, and that was one of the biggest reasons why the bench turned around. Also, DeMarcus Cousins, and having a fulcrum like a Jokić who could operate in a certain way and help make life easier for several different players at the same time. That was good. Denver doesn't have that. Zeke Najee's never going to be that, I don't think. And if I am Denver, I am trying to think of the rest of the rotation, the rest of the lineup. Think, okay, how do we get better here? What's the goal? How do we improve? I think it might be adding another 6'8" dude and just playing Jamal, Bruce Brown, 6'8" dude, and Zeke Najee. And you play those guys a lot of minutes. Maybe it's Christian Brown too. But in general, the Nuggets just need somebody else who's long, athletic, and a highlight machine. Because it's those moments that, like, maybe the highlights aren't necessarily the most important thing, but you want somebody who can change the flow of the game with their play. And I don't think Denver has anybody like that. Like, I'm just looking at the rest of their bench right now. Christian Brown could be that guy. Christian Brown's a candidate. Davon Reed is not. Ish Smith is not really. DeAndre Jordan is not. Vlatko Čančar is not. Those guys are not really change the flow of the game kind of guys, except for Christian Braun. Probably got to play, if we're being honest. Finding minutes for Christian Braun has to be a consistent thing now. He's been playing well every opportunity he's gotten. I think he's played better than Bruce Brown in a lot of these minutes. He's definitely played better than Bones in a lot of these minutes. So Denver needs that juice. They need somebody who's going to provide a little bit of oomph. And I think that he can do that. It's hard to describe what exactly that is, but what I do know is that Denver doesn't have it right now. With that group that was out there, it's not going to be there unless Jamal and Bones just get hot. Just go back and forth, pick and roll style. But in general, I just don't know how often they're going to be able to get to those mechanisms with the way that they play. It's just not going to happen. So they've got to learn. They've got to figure some things out. I think this is fact. I think if we're playing the fact or crap game, first two tweets are probably crap. Last tweet's probably fact. Like, Denver is not going to win a title if the bench is like this. Simple. It's a simple reality. They can play better. Like, they don't necessarily have to play this group. They can flip things around a little bit. Maybe Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter staggers with the bench a little bit more. 29 minutes each for Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter. Probably not enough. Those guys have to be upwards of 30 in this case. Play fewer minutes with Jeff Green. Play more minutes with Michael Porter or Aaron Gordon. Maybe play some Christian Braun. Maybe reduce the minutes with Bones Hyland or Bruce Brown. There's ways that they can do this. And I don't know if they're going to have to trade in order to get it done. I think the easiest way to get it done is to take some of these decisions away from Michael Malone, who wants to play Jeff Green. He wants to stick with Bones Hyland. Those are guys that he wants to play with. And it might not be great. Might not be the right call. We'll see. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, everybody. Brought to you by Superbook Sports. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into the show. My apologies for it being late. Knew I needed to take 24 hours or so in order to get the mind right for this particular show. I will be back tomorrow night, I think, following the Nuggets practice. They'll be practicing on Monday. Probably have some reaction to that. Should be pretty good. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate all the love and support on the podcast. As always, talk to you guys very soon.